Hello and welcome to News Central Now. I'm Dashen, Usman. The top stories this hour. 2 dead, 18 rescued in canoe accident in Jigawa State. Amaewhule-led faction tells Rivers State Governor Fubara to represent 2024 budget. Kenya court rules police killing of Pakistani journalist unlawful. Details of these stories and more shortly. At this hour begins in northern Nigeria, where the police command in Jigawa on Monday confirmed that 2 persons lost their lives while 18 others were rescued in a boat mishap that occurred in the state. DSP Lonel Indir, the command's police public relations officer who confirmed this in a statement in Dutse, said the canoe, which had about 20 passengers on board, capsized on its way to Hatem village. Now, the incident occurred on Sunday in Kwelgei village, Awio local government area, at about 10 p.m. local time. The spokesperson said preliminary investigation revealed that the accident was primarily caused by powerful waves and overloading to the extent where the driver was unable to steer the canoe. We now head to Rivers State, where the Amaewhule-led Rivers State House of Assembly has issued a 7-day ultimatum to Governor Fubara to represent the 2024 budget to the House. The ultimatum came after the first sitting of the pro-Wike House of Monday. Now, the other house, led by Victor Okai, is also holding a parallel sitting. Fubara had earlier presented the budget to the House loyal to him when his current Chief of Staff, Edison Ehie, presided as the Speaker. Ehie and the other pro-Fubara lawmakers passed the budget estimates and the governor signed the bill into law. He stated that it is aimed at promoting economic development, inclusive growth, and addressing socio-economic inequality in the state. Let's now tell you that fuel scarcity is gradually surfacing in Lagos and other parts of the country as private depot owners have hiked the ex-depot price of petrol from 630 naira to 720 naira per litre. This development comes as fuel scarcity deepened in Abuja and surrounding states on Sunday, with some filling stations selling petrol as high as 900 naira per litre. In an interview with the National Vice President of the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, Ahmed Fashola, he revealed that many filling stations were closed because they had no fuel in their tanks. He called on the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, the sole importer of petrol at present, to explain the situation to Nigerians. Fashola also appealed to the public to avoid panic buying and purchase only what they need, ensuring the available fuel can be evenly distributed. We'll come back to issues in the oil sector in a moment, but away from that, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has been re-elected as the chairman of the Economic Community of West African States about 1 year after he took over the leadership of the regional bloc. The Nigerian leader, who rose to power in May 2023, was re-elected as the ECOWAS chairman during the 65th ordinary session of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government. That event took place at the presidential villa in Nigeria's Abuja capital on Sunday. While the ECOWAS Authority Heads of State and Government has appointed the President of Senegal as facilitator in negotiations with the countries of Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso in its efforts to return the 3 countries back to the regional bloc. This was during the recently concluded ordinary session of the authority, where member states were tasked to raise about $2.6 billion needed for the regional standby force. Amaewhule reports.
It is the 65th ordinary session of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government. In attendance are heads of states from all ECOWAS member states.
We have convened this ordinary session to once again review the situation in our region. we are aware of the enormous challenges, including terrorist activities and violent extremism, threatening to spread from Sahel region towards the coastal states.
Our region is still confronted with multiple interlocking threats, including existential ones. These include climatic and man-made crises, leading to terrorism and violent extremism and food insecurity. Livelihoods continue to be threatened by illegal and unsustainable exploitation of our land, forest, and marine resources.
Representatives from the United Nations and the African Union took time to give their charge to the leaders present.
In the context of complex challenges in the sub-region, the United Nations will continue to support national and regional efforts to ensure peace and stability, enhance democracy and good governance, including through inclusive political processes and socio-economic development, with the emphasis on economic empowerment of women and youth.
The urgency to intensify efforts to construct a collective and inclusive front against terrorism, violent extremism, insurgency, and undemocratic means to power, including cyber criminality, are critical areas that must be addressed.
President Tinubu commended the conclusion of discussion on the 5,000-man-strong ECOWAS regional standby force, urged member states to meet expectations for its takeoff.
A peaceful and secure society is essential for achieving our potential. As we move to operationalize the ECOWAS Standby Force, ESF, in combating terrorism, I must emphasize that the success of this plan requires not only strong political will, but also substantial financial resources. We must, therefore, ensure that we meet the expectations and recommendations set forth by our ministers of defense.
The authority appointed the president of Senegal to serve as the ECOWAS facilitator to lead the negotiations with the countries of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso in a bid to return them back to the regional bloc. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
In the meantime, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have come together to form the Alliance of Sahel states. Each is ruled by a military government, and that's led to a split from the larger West African regional bloc, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. The Confederation of Sahel States, which will use the acronym AES and be headed by Mali in its first year, totals about 72 million people. The exit came as the trio shifted away from the former colonial ruler France. All three have expelled anti-jihadi French troops and turned instead towards what they called their sincere partners, Russia, Turkey, and Iran. We're joined by Dr. Victor Okai, a political and African affairs analyst. Hello, doctor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
All right, it's nice to have you join us. Now, let's start with the re-election of President Bola Tinubu as chairman of ECOWAS. Now, of what importance is this to the region, and what should we expect from his leadership this time?
I don't know why he was re-elected, but I guess it gives him an opportunity to be able to remedy the mistakes of his first term. I mean, we had no business letting the Sahelian countries leave, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. They've been an integral part of ECOWAS from the very beginning, and we have lived together as brothers. And we ought to have handled this with a little more tact and diplomacy. I also worry because, you see, it's like we tended to give more, to listen more to Western powers, you know, like France and other Western nations, as opposed to trying to use that Ubuntu African spirit to bring our neighbors closer and try to understand. We also attempted to meddle in their affair, internal affair. I mean, whatever happens in Niger, no matter what we feel, we cannot cry more than the bereaved. Nigerians should have taken the lead, and then ECOWAS follows. But we went there and were almost beating drums of war. So that was what I consider a diplomatic blunder in the first era by our president, and under his watch as well. The left, this was something that has never happened. I won't say never happened, but that should never have been allowed to happen. So I'm hoping that this time around, he would handle things with a lot more tact and diplomacy. And he has started well by getting the president of Senegal as a special envoy to start talking to them. He's closer to them in age, he's younger, and he's francophone like the rest of them. So I'm hoping that the Senegalese president would follow up on this, and then one way or another bring them back. I don't think it will be without compromise, though. We would have to shift grounds one way or another.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, Dr. Okai. Now, still talking about, the trio exiting the ECOWAS, and that should have actually been handled diplomatically. Despite them forming the alliance of the Sahel states and irrevocably severing ties from ECOWAS, the bloc you talked about, the appointment of the Senegal President Faye as facilitator to negotiate their return. Now, what you said also made mention that, he's young, so it's possible that they would actually be able to liaise with him well. But do you see this yielding any positives at all?
I'd say that it should not be without compromise. I'd said that well, not just the fact that he's young, the Senegalese president, but that he's also francophone, like the rest of them. I think that he'll be able to speak in a language that they would understand, because all three of them are products of change in their various countries. So they have something in common. Unlike the older heads of state and sit-tight heads of state you have in the rest of the region and Africa. But I think that for this to work, truth is, we would have to shift grounds. It will no longer be on our terms. It will have to be on their terms. If we do not shift ground, if we're rigid, we will lose them and lose them forever, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Okai, for speaking to us on this. All right, with that, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, the news returns and continues. Stay with us. Back to the oil sector. The Vice President of Oil and Gas at Dangote Industries Limited, Deva Kumar Edwin, has confirmed that the Dangote Oil Refinery will begin supplying petrol in July as scheduled. Edwin made the announcement during a tour of the facility with officials from S&P Global over the weekend. He highlighted the company's goal to drive industrial development, create jobs, and boost economic prosperity by utilizing Africa's abundant crude oil resources to produce refined products locally. Edwin emphasized that the refinery's products are of high quality and meet international standards, capable of meeting 100% of Nigeria's demand for petrol, diesel, kerosene, and aviation fuel, with surpluses available for export. Some areas of Lagos State experienced blackout on Saturday around 3 p.m. Now, this was confirmed from a message from Ikeja Electric. Though some reported that a national electricity power grid crashed to 70.60 megawatts around 4 p.m., this would make it the 7th time the national grid would collapse in 2024. The previous collapses were on February 4th, April 10th, April 15th, March 11th, March 12th, and March 28th. During the inauguration of the 31st Member Presidential Economic Coordination Council held at the Council Chamber of the Presidential Villa in Abuja on Thursday, President Bola Tinubu described the current low electricity generation in the country as shameful. Away from that, the federal government confirmed on Sunday that it has activated emergency centers across the country to tackle the ongoing flood situation in several states. The government urged residents living in flood-prone areas to relocate from floodplains, emphasizing that citizens' responses in some affected regions have been below expectations. This announcement came from the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, as various state governments began river dredging and ordered evacuations in flood-prone areas. Earlier, the federal government reported that no fewer than 10 states and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, have experienced varying degrees of flooding or recorded casualties due to intensified rains. During a press briefing in Abuja, the Minister of Water Resources and Sanitation, Professor Joseph Utsev, issued a red alert warning that 21 more states might face flooding in the near future. The United Nations Children's Fund and Nigeria's National Emergency Management Agency have called on the 6 states of the Nigerian Northeast region to prioritize the development of emergency preparedness strategies and risk analysis mechanisms in response to the emerging threats. Now, these efforts aim to enhance early warning systems, improve response capacities, and prioritize the protection of vulnerable populations, particularly children and women. News Central's Umari Kirawa completes the report.
Conflict, displacement, and natural disasters are some of the challenges confronting the 6 states of the northeast Nigeria. This gathering by experts on disaster risk management emphasized the importance of proactive measures to ensure the safety and well-being of the citizenry.
As every year we have outbreaks of cholera, but in 2023 there were recorded 3,000 cases of cholera, out of which 3% were fatal cases, right? So you see the need to have these contingency plans. You see the need to protect our community as well. Well, of course, responding to the crisis, to the hazard, to the emergency situation is role of the government, right? But UNICEF is committed to support this role.
Cases which ranges from malaria, cholera, and other diseases do arise, in some of these communities, and it is for that reason that the partners are all brought together to sit down and devise a more enhanced techniques and approach to respond to these issues.
The agencies have pledged to provide support and guidance to the state in developing effective emergency preparedness plans.
Contingency planning is not only related to more effectiveness, but also efficiencies. Through this, we want to have a community, we would like to support the government in have communities better prepared and in the long run, eventually more resilient to shocks.
It is therefore our collective responsibility to equip ourselves with our necessary skills, knowledge, regarding to mitigate the impacts of this crisis and to ensure a safety of the well-being of our most vulnerable among us.
The state governments have expressed their commitment to working with NEMA, UNICEF, and other stakeholders to enhance their capacity for risk analysis and emergency response. By prioritizing preparedness and resilience building efforts, the states hope to safeguard the lives and livelihoods of their residents in the face of ongoing challenges. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
With Nigeria losing billions in naira and millions in dollars to cybercrime, many say its effects is taking a toll on the nation's economy. In this report, our correspondent, Marvelous Obomanu, sampled the perception many young Nigerians have about cybercrime and why it is becoming more popular among youths in the country.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Nigeria lost over $500 million to cybercrime in 2022, while the nation's banking sector also lost 8 billion naira to internet fraud. Despite the visible danger internet fraud poses to the nation's economy, many youths see it as an innovative means of economic survival rather than as a criminal enterprise. Recently, some youths in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, took to the streets to raise awareness on the dangers of internet fraud and to call on the nation's anti-graft agency, the EFCC, to do more in tackling cybercrime. Internet fraudsters, popularly called Yahoo Yahoo, is gaining dominance in the Nigerian society. It is mostly engaged by youths from 18 to 35 years. Some of them say the factor pushing youths into this Yahoo Yahoo is because there is a failure on the part of the government to provide job and employment for them. Some of them have said they've graduated from school only to finish and there is no job.
How can a full-grown youth graduate from school and will not have job to work, to get back a living for himself? I am not blaming any of the youth today. I am blaming the government. Because if the government have made provision for the youth, just as they've promised us from their campaign time to this moment, the internet fraud will not be as much as in the society today.
Nigeria has all the resources it requires to train, bring up Nigerian youth in a good way, train them and give them what they want, livelihood. But due to the failure of government has failed to do his responsibility. That is where we have landed ourselves in this aspect.
While available data states that cybercrime is on the increase in Nigeria and is more popular among the youth in the country, some, however, believe there are several reasons for this trend.
If I'm free doing nothing after graduating from school, no job, nothing, sitting at home, definitely something will come up to my mind. And you know, these days the youth like it the easy way. Knowing fully well that the easy way is not the best, but they prefer the easy way and face the consequences later.
Some blame the quest to make quick and easy money, while others think the nation's political class has not led by example, as there is so much wealth in display without relevant industries to explain their source.
Our politicians, what they live on is collecting money, taking it abroad, investing in other countries, collecting our own currency, changing it to hard currency, taking it outside the country to develop the country outside there. Why not bring that currency, why not bring that money back to this country, develop this country, build factories for this company and employ the youth? So if you are blaming the youth of being into fraudster, yes, you blame them because they have no option than to do.
But even in this level of moral decadence and the bad image it is bringing to the Nigerian society, a lot of them have also expressed hope that if the government does what it's supposed to do, the issue of Yahoo Yahoo will become a thing of the past.
My encouragement to the youth is, please, there is more to life than Yahoo. There is more to life than ritual. There is more to life than every other thing we think.
I'm advising the ladies, instead of going into Yahoo Yahoo, there are so many handworks. Like our entrepreneurs who tell us, there are so many handwork skills you can learn and go into that you benefit yourself much more than risking yourself going into Yahoo Yahoo.
Societal expectations have also been identified to compound the problem, as the nation's dwindling economy has worsened the level of poverty and youth unemployment.
After graduating, paying school fees of 200,000, after graduating, not having a job that will give you 250,000 naira per month, what do you expect such youth to do?
Even if they find themselves doing one handwork or the other, it's either the pay is not enough to cater for their needs or the pay is not even worth it. So instead of looking out to a peanut at the end of the month, it's better they go into Yahoo Yahoo to get more sources to sustain themselves.
With youths in Nigeria under extreme pressure, many will advise young Nigerians to stay clear of cybercrime, as it is not the way to go. In Abuja for News Central, Marvelous Obama.
Thank you, Marvelous, for that report. Now, coming up, Kenya court rules police killing of Pakistani journalist unlawful. We'll bring you details after the break. Stay with us. Rwanda is preparing for the general elections on the 15th of this month to elect president and members of the Chamber of Deputies. Rwanda's elections in 2024 are expected to be a tightly managed electoral exercise. President Paul Kagame has declared the winner of the 2017 elections with 99% of the vote, and political analysts saying the results are unlikely to vary much during this cycle. Kagame has ruled Rwanda since 1994, coming to power in the wake of the genocide of an estimated 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus. Now, if elected into power again, this will be the 66-year-old Kagame's fourth official term. Meanwhile, Frank Habineza of the Democratic Green Party and independent candidate Felipe Mpayimana are the only two candidates running against Kagame. One of Kagame's fiercest critics, Victor Ingabire Umuhoza, is also interested in running. However, she is barred due to a previous arrest for inciting divisionism and conspiring against the government. To discuss this, we're joined by Lonel Indir, a freelance writer and political analyst based in Kigali, Rwanda. Hello, thank you so much for joining us at this time, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so how would you describe the overall mood in Rwanda as the country prepares for the upcoming elections?
Oh, you know, the mood is rather festive. This is not surprising. The elections coincide with the 30th anniversary of liberation. So the RPF movement, which led the liberation struggle, still leads the country. It has achieved a lot. So the achievements are a cause for celebration and a cause for hope that tomorrow will be even better.
Well, Lionel, despite, the festive mood, I'm sure there are also issues or some concerns. Can you tell us what are the key issues that Rwandans, are concerned about, especially when it comes to heading into the polls? And how do you think that the current political climate in Rwanda, is compared to, previous elections?
So, apart from the fact that it is the 30th anniversary, so it's a big date, I don't think there is much difference. But there is excitement for some voters who are voting for the first time. And the two key issues here that are discussed, at least in my view, are security, because there is concern that the situation in the DRC could spill over into Rwanda. And also, there are issues related to economy, because the issues related to youth unemployment and inflation, as we see in other parts of the continent, also exist in Rwanda.
Okay. Now, what can you tell us, is new, about the new emerging players in the political scene that could shake up the status quo?
I don't think there is a candidate that can shake up the status quo. You have to understand what any candidate outside the ruling coalition faces. So Paul Kagame is a hero to Rwandans. He is a man who led the army that stopped the genocide. He has turned Rwanda into one of the best run and safest countries in the world, a country that provides services to every Rwandan in an impersonal way. And this hero is backed by a coalition of a dozen political parties. You cannot compete with that record and that level of support. I don't think that those who are running against him are out to defeat him. I think
you seem very sure that Kagame is going to win this election.
There is no doubt about it.
Okay. So, but how do you think the economy will impact, voting decisions? Will economic issues like, poverty, inequality, or even corruption, be major concerns for voters?
The issue of corruption is not really a big one in Rwanda. I think the corruption is very low here. And, Rwanda are not wealthier or less affected by inflation than their neighbors. But the difference with what is happening elsewhere, I think, is that they share their leaders' belief that if Rwanda continues on its current development path, these problems will be solved and that their material conditions will improve as well. So I don't think there is much concern about that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lonel, for speaking to us on this. And all the best in your elections, and may the best man win.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, let's head to the east of the continent, where a Kenyan court on Monday found police acted unlawfully over the killing of a Pakistani journalist in 2022 following a complaint by his widow. Arshad Sharif, a strident critic of Pakistan's powerful military establishment and supporter of former Premier Imran Khan, was shot in the head when Kenyan police opened fire on his car in October 2022. The High Court in Kajiado, south of Nairobi, rejected a police claim that the killing was a case of mistaken identity and that officers believed they were firing on a stolen vehicle involved in an abduction. Judge Stella Mutuku ruled that Sharif's murder was unconstitutional and that his rights to life and protection were violated. The court ordered the government to pay 10 million Kenyan shillings in compensation.
Increased demand for taking actions against militants, especially in North Waziristan. And even if Obama doesn't get re-elected, the
Now up north, Abdullah Ali Hassani Sharif, president of Algeria's Islamist party, Movement for Society and Peace, has announced his candidacy for the early presidential election on September 7th. Speaking at a rally in Ain Benin, a coastal town approximately 30 kilometers northwest of Algiers, Sharif emphasized that the upcoming presidential polls will be a crucial test for the legal and political guarantees that Algerians are demanding.
واخترنا أن ننافس في هذه الانتخابات الرئاسية وأن نكون هذه الانتخابات الرئاسية القادمة هي امتحان حقيقي للضمانات القانونية والسياسية التي طالب بها الجزائر اليوم لجعل الانتخابات والاستحقاقات الانتخابية فرصة للتنافس السياسي النزيه واستقلالية الهيئات المشرفة على العملية الانتخابية.
On World Rap, France's far-right National Rally was widely expected to win this snap election, but instead they were beaten into third place. A left-wing alliance called New Popular Front won the most seats after a highly charged and abbreviated election called only 4 weeks ago by weakened President Emmanuel Macron. Now, National Rally, RN, won the first round of this election, and all the opinion polls since then predicted victory in the runoff round. Instead, France now faces a hung parliament with no party having anything like a majority. RN leader Jordan Bardella blamed unnatural political alliances for stopping their rise to power. In the meantime, French riot police have clashed with demonstrators marching through the streets of Rennes after celebrating the results of the second round of the French general election, which saw the New Popular Front, NFP, come out on top ahead of the presidential group and the far-right National Rally. People took to the streets in several cities to celebrate the surprise victory of the left-wing alliance, according to preliminary results. Tensions rose in Republic Square in central Paris, where police intervened against protesters. In the northern city of Lille, police reportedly used tear gas against 500 members of an anti-fascist group. Southern Marseille was also jolted by protests involving 5,000 people, police said, with the crowd chanting slogans against the far right, according to Le Figaro. Now to discuss this, we're joined by our international correspondent, Hafia Hagen. Hello, Hafia. Thank you for joining us. Now, can you tell us why was this election result, such a shock?
Well, this election took place in two parts. We had the first runoff last week, and this time last week, National Rally, that far-right party led by Marine Le Pen, were leading the polls. They had about 31% of the vote. So it felt like the next runoff, which happened yesterday, was a done deal, and that National Rally and far-right contingents would win this election. But instead, they haven't even come second. They have come first. And this is because of a coalition of left-leaning parties decided to come together under Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who's a veteran left-wing firebrand. He got together parties such as the Greens, France Unbowed, which is his own radical party, socialists and communists and other parties came together with the sole purpose of making sure that National Rally didn't get into power and it worked. Now, they don't have an overall majority in parliament by any means. There's 577 seats available. And that New Popular Front, that's what they're called, that ensemble of left-wing parties, 108 votes. Emmanuel Macron's centrist-leaning coalition have 159 votes, and National Rally on 143 seats in Parliament. So that means that the left-wing contingency that got together along with the centrists will be the ones to form a coalition to lead Parliament. Now, France has a history of not doing very well when it comes to coalitions, and so a lot of people are now worried. They're pleased, certainly, that National Rally are not in power, but now the question becomes, who is going to lead France? Now, the French Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, has already said that he's going to resign. Emmanuel Macron, the president, has asked him to stay on until another prime minister has been chosen. And let's also remember, it's important to note that Emmanuel Macron is not really involved in this election. This is a parliamentary election. He's the president. He has another 3 years in power until the presidential election. He is affiliated with Ensemble, which is the centrist coalition or centrist parties with people from the left, from the right, and in the centre. That's where he lies. But he himself was not voted on in this particular election.
All right, now, Afia, we've actually seen, tensions on one hand and also celebration on the other hand. What has been the reaction to this surprise result? What can you tell us about this?
Definitely tensions and celebrations. And I think actually France was prepared for much more violence and rising tensions as opposed to the celebrations that broke out yesterday across major cities. Now, there was some skirmishes across France, but not as much as the police expected. Like I said, they expected there to be much more violence if National Rally had won. Now, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, he gave a press conference almost immediately where he called on the New Popular Front to be able to govern. That's the coalition of left-wing parties. He told supporters that in Stalingrad Square. And then he gave another press conference as well at the Place de la République, where he celebrated his success with about 8,000 people in the crowd. Now, we're yet to hear from President Emmanuel Macron on his thoughts on this. Like we said, we have heard from the Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, who said that he will resign and he will not be part of this government going forward. We do know that President Macron has asked him to stay on until another Prime Minister has been chosen, but there has been no reaction and no statement from President Emmanuel Macron as yet, and that's what we would have expected by now.
Now, Afia, what can we expect to happen in the coming days?
Absolutely, and that's a good question. Look, it's about 4:45 in Paris at the moment. Like I said, we should have heard from Emmanuel Macron. Maybe we will in the next couple of hours. We are just days out, essentially, from the Olympics. That's a huge showpiece event for Paris, and for France. And at the moment, this is a country that doesn't have a stable government, has an outgoing prime minister. And that's not a good look for France in any way, shape, or form. They are at risk from three major things. The first will be a financial risk, the risk of France's economic decline. The euro has already dropped a few percentage points at the moment at the anticipation of possibly this left-wing coalition going on a spending spree. The second risk there is of an ideological fracture of the nation. There will be legitimate anger of some of citizens in France that they weren't adhered to, that they weren't listened to, that maybe they feel their votes haven't counted, because although we do not have a national rallying government, they did get a sizable amount of votes. And the third risk is from a regime crisis. The National Assembly is scattered. We need consistency in France, and they need a return to stable government. France is one of the most powerful and influential countries in the world, but at the moment doesn't have a stable government and hasn't managed to actually form that coalition. So in the coming days, these are the things that need to be firmed up. And like I said, this is against the backdrop of the upcoming Olympics, a huge showpiece and showcase for Paris, for France. So France needs to get a grip on itself, a grip on the reality of their government in the coming days, not weeks, as people prepare to descend on the country for this festival of sport.
All right, well, thank you so much, Afia, for an update on the France elections. Now in business, according to a newly released report by the National Bureau of Statistics, the total capital importation into Nigeria rose by 210.16% to $3.3 billion in the first quarter of 2024. This is against the $1.1 billion recorded in fourth quarter 2023 and first quarter 2023's $1.13 billion, indicating an increase of 198%. On Business Edge today, Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO at Share Investment, explained the reality of current dollar liquidity and mentioned how it could be beneficial.
Investment is the key to any developmental project in any economy. But people will argue with you normally and say that it's foreign portfolio investor that automatically becomes foreign direct investor in the long term. But that we might wait to see. It also still depends on what the numbers are going forward, what type of investment were they able to have, and what kind of returns do they have on their investment in terms of repatriating their investment back to their respective country. That's what will attract them to become a foreign direct investors. And the challenge here is, come to think about it, if they're exiting at 90 days and you don't have enough FX to do the two-way system, then you might be back to where the dollar to the naira could just be going high because of the exportation of this money is more than the importation that you enjoyed before. So, and you'll be exporting to them at a very higher rate compared to.
All right, Mukhtar, just before we go, I want us to.
And that's all at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our top stories. We told you that 2 dead, 18 rescued in canoe accident in Jigawa State. We also told you that Amaewhule-led faction tells Rivers State Governor Fubara to represent 2024 budget. Finally, you heard that Kenya court rules police killing of Pakistani journalist unlawful. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Dashen, Usman.